Hi, everybody. I'm Spencer Hughes. Welcome to a paranormal edition of the Spencer Hughes Show. We do this once a week, usually on Saturday nights, but the beauty of this new format is I can do it anytime I like when it's convenient for myself, especially for our guests that we have on from time to time. So that's what we've done. This is a special podcast edition of our paranormal show of the Spencer Hughes Show. And every week we have a new guest. Usually we have guests, we have authors, we have paranormal investigators, we have big names, from television shows into the paranormal, and a personal friend of mine who I ghost hunt with, and all sorts of cool people. And tonight is no exception. We have two great people that I feel like I know already just from chatting with them before the interview here. They're from Everyday Paranormal, and we'll remind you in a moment why that sounds familiar to you. Everyday Paranormal of Louisiana. And I want to welcome Ken and Maria, who join us, who are the lead investigators at Everyday Paranormal of Louisiana. Hey, you guys, how you doing?
Hey, Spencer, how's it going?
Doing great. Thank you.
It's going great. Now, I want to tell you this, and I mean this. Whenever I get callers on my show from Louisiana, my heart softens because even though my wife and I have only been there once, I fell in love with Louisiana. We didn't spend more than 2 or 3 days there, mostly in New Orleans, but we went out to some of the plantations, and something drew us there. I mean, my in-laws invited us out there, so they drew us there. But what I meant was we felt like we were pulled. There's something magical about your state, and I really do believe that. It's a very, very wonderful place, I think.
Oh, there's no other place like it. It is something. And when you mention plantations, I mean, it doesn't get any better than here. It's fabulous.
Yeah, I had to do a little research because my memory, this was only about 3 years ago that we went, but all the plantation names started running together, and we really wanted to go to the Myrtles, which we'll talk about this hour with you guys in more detail. But we went to Oak Alley. That was the one plantation we spent some time at, was Oak Alley, and just a magnificent place. I mean, just incredible, like most of them are.
Well, did you stay in any of the cabins?
No, we were staying in New Orleans, so we didn't stay any overnights, and we really wanted to do that. But so we didn't stay overnight. We did kind of day trips out to the plantation country. And a funny story here that has nothing to do with ghosts, but I was so excited because in addition to being a radio nerd and a ghost hunting nerd, I'm also a movie buff. And I got my trivia mixed up, you guys. I thought this was the plantation in Forrest Gump. So the whole time I'm telling my in-laws and I'm telling my wife, I go, this is Forrest Gump. He ran up this path, and that's Mama's room up there. That window's where Mama was dying up in that room. And they were believing it because they didn't question it. I'm like, oh, these oak trees. Remember when Forrest Gump was running? He ran through these oak trees. And then I get home and I research it, and it's nowhere near. I don't even think it was in Louisiana, actually.
No. Well, it was at least it was entertaining.
Yeah, so I thought I was Forrest Gump there for a couple of hours. But anyway, you guys have spent a lot of time at some of these plantations, and I'm really envious that you guys are so close to just not only beautiful parts of the country, but very haunted places of the country. Why don't we start off with, before we get into your backgrounds, what do you think it is about Louisiana? I know everyone always says, my state's the most haunted, and, oh, no, my state's more haunted than yours. But Louisiana, there's no doubt about it. It is a very, very haunted place in this country. Why do you guys think that is?
Well, we've talked about that a lot of times, and to be honest, we're not really sure. We've come to the conclusion, years ago, that it was location meant everything. It didn't have to be a haunted house or a building or where some murder occurred, but the location itself, the land, the area. And I think in Louisiana, the best way I can put it is, it's just there is so much history. It goes back so far in history, that and turmoil and strife, plus religious attitudes and religions. There's just a ton here. A lot of suffering. It's that, and you add the heat and humidity to it, and the mosquitoes, and it just.
Yeah, the swamp scared the heck out of me. I didn't see an alligator or anything, but we were going over some of those causeways over the swamp area, and I thought, oh my God. See, I'm from California, so earthquake territory. I'm thinking earthquakes. Like, what if this freeway collapses into the swamp below? I'm going to die here, I'm going to become a ghost in Louisiana, but
yeah.
No, all you got to worry about is the hurricanes here.
Yeah. What you both have law enforcement backgrounds going back 3 decades, is that right? A long history in law enforcement.
Right. Well, 3 decades apiece. We both, we started out in West Texas, and then both were with police departments in West Texas, then sheriff's office and police departments in Colorado, then eventually got here. So, yeah, it's been a long trip.
Now, it's funny because my partner in the paranormal, as I call him, my really good friend, Dave Mace, who you guys know, and he actually put me in contact with you guys.
Right.
He and I have a great time. He's a photographer as I am, so when we're not out hunting ghosts, we're out photographing things together, and when we can combine the two, it's awesome. But I asked him the same question, being ex-law enforcement himself. Most of the police officers I know, and coincidentally a lot of my friends through the years have been and currently are in law enforcement, they seem to be very, very critical, many of them, of the paranormal, at least the ones I've run into.
I guess it just depends on the individual officers and how they look at things, but everything is basically by the book. You've got to make, the case, and it has to be presented in a court of law. So a lot of them are in that mindset, and others are not. They tend to be more open to things that aren't explainable by the law books, and won't make it in a court of law just yet, but there are those. You have both sides.
One of the things that we found years ago, and it still holds true today, was even back in the mid-'70s when we first started out, or early '70s, whenever it was a long time ago. When we first started, we noticed that there was like a large group of officers that totally believed the paranormal. They saw things, they knew things, they heard things, they had seen it. On the other hand, there was always a group of officers, a pretty good chunk, that basically said, I don't care what it is, who saw it, or what. I don't believe it. It didn't happen. And that holds true today. There's officers today that love to get these kind of calls, or as some officers call them, weird calls. But at the same time, there's other officers that don't want anything to do with it, don't believe it, even if they see it.
Wow, it's kind of like you guys are kind of like the X-Files. You guys are like Mulder and Scully, and you're this is kind of cool. You're a married couple, and I mean, no, seriously, I mean, long, extensive, background in law enforcement, and then getting kind of these calls. And I asked Dave this too, and he said it happened once in a while, getting a call. How often would you get a call from someone not being mugged or burglarized or having someone prowling around their backyard, but saying, hey, I think I have a ghost here, or how would they approach it with you? How would the dispatcher give you those calls, if at all?
Well, one of the things was, both of us were with the Odessa Police Department in Texas back in the mid-'70s, and dispatch would actually call, usually if they got a call that was if it was something emergency or something that sounded that bad, they would dispatch patrol officers. But if it was something where you could just go out and talk to the people, see what was going on, they'd usually send a detective. When we were in detectives, dispatch would just call back to the detective division, depending on who was on, and they already knew there was a whole list of guys that would jump on any chance to go. There was a whole group of us, surprisingly, that we literally just lived for those moments. But we would get calls, I can't tell you how often, but we would get calls pretty often, and we'd go out there, and of course it was always back in those days, whatever you got, somebody was going to, higher up than you was going to take it and hide it, because they didn't want anybody to know about it.
But it was never anything like a ghost or something like that. It was something unexplainable happened here, or
like X-Files.
Yeah. I don't know what happened, but I've got stuff coming out of my ceiling, or something moved or is missing and stuff like that.
A good example right there, what Maria mentioned, we got a call, and even she and I, we weren't married at the time, but we both got the call. I think, I believe if I remember right, there were 2 or 3 other detectives. I mean, this poor young couple with their child and their dog called in, and they said they had blood dripping from their ceiling. And,
man. What did that turn out to be? I mean, that wasn't really blood, right?
No, well, 5 detectives end up showing up, and we go in there, and we're all excited. We're loving it. And these poor people are scared to death, and we're trying to calm them down and tell them, well, don't worry, whatever it is, we'll handle it. But we do everything we can. We check the dog. We ask them, about injuries, anybody bleeding, is anything. We can see the blood drops on the ceiling where they came through the ceiling, so we figure it's simple. There's something dead up there. So of course, this is West Texas. You go up there, and there's a half-inch deep, silty dust covering the attic, and there's not a mark in it. There's not a drop of blood,
You're
nothing.
kidding me.
And one thing that to top that story off, we back then I was working at the hospital off duty, and I took a sample of the blood. Back in those days, of course, there wasn't any DNA or anything going, but took that sample of blood back to the hospital, and I had the lab check it. And of course, at the time, all they could tell me was, yes, it was human blood. Where it came from, no idea.
That's unbelievable. I mean, that's one of the craziest things I've heard in a long time. You read about those things in books, but to talk to you guys who have a lot of credibility in my eyes to relate a story that you saw with your own eyes, did that creep you out? I mean, where were you in your paranormal experience when that happened? Where were you? What stage were you guys in?
I'd say we were just taking a guess, putting it loosely. I think we were probably past beginning stage. At that point, we were probably, I guess a good way of putting it was stupid enough to be excited about it. And I mean, we just enjoyed it. We thrived on that. It never did seem to be anything scary. It was always, I guess it was because we were the big bad cops and we could handle it, but it never seemed like anything bad. So it was pretty easy to do.
I wouldn't know how to, I always try to debunk things, and you guys do the same thing, and any good investigator tries to do that. In other words, for people that don't know what that means, if the door keeps swinging open in the middle of the night, maybe there's a reasonable explanation. So you see maybe the room's slanted, maybe gravity's opening the door, maybe there's a cat that's pushing the door open. So you try to rule all the obvious things out. And then at the end, maybe you have something paranormal. But I don't know how I would debunk that, you guys. I mean, how would somebody get up there, even on a ladder, and let's say they were cut or something, and I don't know how you would have drops of blood coming off of a ceiling. That seems almost impossible to stage.
Yeah, exactly. And especially if it's not, like dogs can, I don't know what they call it, but sometimes they aspirate or they blow out blood through their nose, and then that wasn't it. They said, no, nothing's wrong with the dog and things like that. So, yeah.
Well, a lot of times, even back then and still today, one of the things we look at, I hate to say this because it sounds like some secret, but it's not. You rely heavily on years of experience with people, with human nature. You're watching them closely for their reactions, what they're doing, if they're acting normal as a scared person or normal as a terrified person. You're watching their reactions real closely to see if, is there something funny going on here, or is this person legitimately scared?
And they were scared.
Now, what is your theory for each of you, if you adhere to the theory of kind of psychokinesis and telekinesis and things that maybe my explanation of the blood might be something projected? I don't know how scientifically you could prove that or how it could even be possible, but maybe it's the people themselves through some type of an emotional thing or some type of a telekinetic thing projecting the blood somehow, or because I believe that happens with objects that move. I think our minds are that powerful. We just don't know how to tune into that. But I think our minds are way more powerful than we think they are. And we could do all sorts of things with our minds if we studied them more and took the time to try to use them more. But do you think that could be a reason for that? Or sometimes I think ghosts could be projections from ourselves. I haven't ruled that out, that some apparitions aren't emanating from the people in the home somehow. I don't know how, but
yeah, I think in all possibility, there's like we always say, there is so much out there that we don't understand and don't know. There's just no way of proving a lot of it. It's like we tell people, clients that call us all the time, we tell them, you can't go to the internet and look it up and go, oh, here we go, here's the answer to what it is.
Right.
It's almost like what we laughingly refer to as a theoretical science. Even though it's not science, we're doing our best to try to figure out exactly what could have done this, even if we can't prove it did it. But like in the case, like what you're saying, yes, I think people have the power in their mind. Some people, even though they're skeptics, there's some people out there that can do things with just their mental power that you can't disprove it, and you just can't, at the same time, you can't figure out how they do it. But yeah, to project a ghost or to somehow manifest it through your mind, I think it's totally possible. Haven't run across it, but I think it could
be. The closest thing I came to, this was an amazing thing that happened to me. It was a brand new Sony recorder I had. It was kind of one of the higher end ones, and I was trying it out. And my wife's aunt took us to a cabin on the Russian River in Northern California, beautiful area in the summer to swim, and the kids play in the river and stuff. And they have a cabin there, an old family cabin, and down the road there was a cabin that her aunt took me to. Just the two of us went down there, and it was empty. They were trying to rent it for some time. And I said, why are you bringing me here? And she goes, well, I know you're into this ghost hunting stuff. I don't really believe it myself, but a woman killed herself in this cabin, and a lot of they can't rent it. And people go in there, and they just get all these heebie-jeebies, and it's just a weird feeling in there. And she killed herself maybe a year ago before this happened. So, of course, I'm sitting there going, okay, this is up my alley. So we went in there, turned on the recorder. She and I were the only ones around for blocks, right? And she wouldn't go in. She wouldn't go across the threshold. I went in. I turned on the recorder. It's on for maybe a minute. And I'm just talking to her and to myself and saying, well, this is a cool location. Maybe I'll leave a drop recorder here overnight. No one's going to steal it or even come in here to find it. So I'll leave it overnight and see if I get anything. And as I'm saying that, I hear a woman singing. And it was the creepiest thing. I wish I had the MP3 handy for you. It's on another computer. But she's singing in a falsetto type voice that it's so distinct I can to this day imitate it. I mean, it has musical notes to it, and it has a melody line to it, and it goes on for about 30 seconds.
Wow.
And it's the longest one of the longest EVPs I've ever gotten. And in there, right after that EVP, there's an EVP that sounds exactly like me. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, well, it was you, stupid. You know, you had the recorder going and you're talking, so it was obviously you. But you could tell the difference in the voice levels, that it's way off in the distance. It sounds like it's way, way, way off, but it sounds like me, and it says yes. And I didn't even really ask a question, I don't think, for that EVP to answer a question, but it came across a definite yes. And I've played that to 100 people, and everybody says that's you. And I go, it wasn't me, because I wasn't talking at that point in the EVP session. I was not. I know for a fact I wasn't talking. I know exactly what I was doing at that point. And that leads me to believe that whole thing about the mind. Like, I'm wondering if that was my voice unconsciously being picked up or something. It's very strange to me, but that's the only example I have where personally I think that might be possible. And to boot, it was my own voice. So kind of creepy.
And Spencer, I agree. I would agree even without hearing it, because did you hear the singing?
No, we didn't hear it audibly with our ears. It was totally dead silent in there. You could hear a pin drop. There was nobody in that building singing. There was nobody in the neighborhood singing. It was totally, definitely an EVP, but we could not hear it until I played back the tape. And I played it right after we left, and I think she went from skeptic to believer just because of that 10 minutes we spent in that house. I mean, she was shaking at the end. She couldn't believe what she heard on that tape.
Well, we, going right along with you, we did an investigation at a client's house, and someone that we know, and he was very, very, he had a garage sale, and whenever someone bought something, he would always say, sold! And we went in to do an investigation in his house because they were having some activity.
This was about 3 months after the garage sale we did this.
Right. And we're in there and we're doing it, and then we come back and we start analyzing all the EVPs, and sure enough, whose voice did we record saying sold? And he was not there. He left the house along with his girlfriend, and they weren't there at all during the time, and yet we got his voice, and he couldn't believe it when he heard it.
So he was living, obviously. This wasn't a voice of a deceased person. This was, like in my case, this was a living person.
Exactly.
Right. See, that brings up the huge question of where exactly does time go? I mean, what we heard was the exact same. It was him, what we heard him doing 3 months before. Well, this guy, when he did that sound, I mean, that night during the investigation, he wasn't even there. He was across town, literally, to put it nicely, at a party. Because he showed up at the house that we were investigating about 3 o'clock in the morning, and not in too good a shape. But when he showed up, though, I mean, we knew for a fact he was gone. And we heard it. We got his voice on recording. And when he heard it, his girlfriend heard it. Everybody heard it. They knew it was him.
Yeah.
Where does time go? And like you said, he wasn't dead. He was a living person that somehow his voice came back again 3 months later.
And there have been cases of apparitions of the same. I've seen it in a lot of these ghost shows, and I've seen it in the literature and in the history and stuff of paranormal investigating, that people will see an apparition of, let's say, their aunt, and then the first thing they think is, oh, my God, my aunt's dead, and then she's still alive, maybe for many years after that. So
Right.
You wonder if it's like an out of body experience. You know what I mean? Are they seeing the person's soul or spirit, or what is happening where people are seeing the apparitions of living people? That's really mysterious to me. It's pretty fascinating.
And it is. It is. I agree. And it's exciting when you actually have something like that happen, because it brings in the question of, again, like you were saying, the mind and what it can do. And a lot of people are skeptic about it, and others are more open to it. And you have your own evidence right there. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I live in a very haunted house, and I wish I could say it was an old, plantation, hundreds of years old with a lot of history to it. But we're the first. It's kind of a boring story. We're the first owners of the house. I mean, we've been living here 6 years. Next month, I think it'll be 6 years in June, and we looked it up. I mean, we were the first owners. It was sold to a couple, and then the deal fell through, and then it went on the market again, and we bought it. But no one physically ever, other than walking through here, ever lived in this house. And that goes back to your earliest comments in the interview, Ken, about how the land. I mean, we're researching the land, because obviously, and I did, by the way, call the police and try to document if somebody, maybe a construction worker building the house, had died. I looked into all that. Did somebody kill themselves? Did the first owners, kill themselves in the house before they bought it? Or all that stuff. And there was no reports of the police ever being called out to this address ever. There was never anything like that happened. So I think it's the history. The apparition we've seen it about 4 or 5 times, and it's usually 2 males, and they're wearing like blue coveralls and like white work shirts and kind of middle age, a little bit younger. But it's very startling, obviously, when you see these things. And I know some people that never see an apparition, even who are ghost hunters and who are open to seeing them. And I've seen it 3 times in my house, and my wife has seen it at least that many times. Our teenage daughter has seen it. And what's weird is that going back to this whole maybe where does time go thing, every single time we see it, except for the one my wife has seen, like my daughter and I describe it as looking like my oldest stepson. It's so startling, because when we first walk into the room and see him standing there, the first thing my brain says is, that's my 16-year-old stepson. That's not a ghost. That's my stepson standing there. But one time I was working on my laptop looking across towards the front of the house, and we have a lot of archways, so it's an open floor plan. And it looked like he was standing halfway in the room where I could see him, and halfway in the dining room. We're straight down, the wall. And I looked up thinking it was him, and then he like stepped into the other room. Like he shifted his weight into the other room, like hiding from me. And I'm like, why would he be hiding from my glance? That doesn't make any sense. So it freaked me out. And then my brain started processing it, and the blood rushed, from my head. And I go, that's not my stepson. And I rushed around the corner, and there was nobody there. Nobody was in the house. And then my wife had the theory, what if it's our stepson? What if it's my stepson Avery time traveling? I mean, could that be a possibility? Like he's visiting, it is him, but it's a different him. Like it's from a different time. Like he's coming back into his old house and puttering around. I mean, he's only 16, so maybe by the time he's our age, there will be time travel, and he's just going back and checking things out. I don't know. I don't have answers to this stuff, but it's a possible theory. Maybe. What do you guys think?
Well, it's very possible. I mean, yeah, time travel, I would think, could be possible. I mean, it is a possible, a suggestion. I'm having a hard time there. A suggestion as to what it could be. Maria's the one that's big in quantum physics, quantum mechanics, string, all that. And which, as soon as she says the word physics, I'm lost right there. But there are a lot of people that subscribe to the idea that alternate universes where somewhere out there's a Spencer Hughes that does radio broadcasts on and on and on, but there's variations. And then there's other theories that say that there could be more alternate universes that are just each one separated by one little difference, and they just keep going and going and going, and there's just gazillions of them. That one we don't really ever get deep into, because it's almost mind-boggling. I mean, it really is. You can't even figure that one. But yeah, I mean, we've seen things before like that are similar, that, it's like you said, the blood rushes from your head or to your head or whatever, because you look up and for a split second there, wait a second, that's not who I thought it was.
Yeah.
Then everything sort of falls apart, and you're going, oh, wait.
Yeah,
So,
I like this parallel universe idea. I'd like to think, Maria and Ken, that somewhere there's a taller, better-looking version of me with a lot of hair. I mean, who's not bald. I mean, that would be great, huh?
That would be.
It
For
has
all
it has a
of us,
lot of money. Has a lot of money and drives a nice car.
yeah,
Right.
and somewhere out there is a Ken Allaire saying, "Okay, we'll be right back with our guest, Spencer Hughes."
So this is fascinating stuff, and I'm going through the X-Files right now with my oldest daughter, who's almost 15, and she loves it. But they taught. We just saw an episode where the two characters in the later. This is season 9. They swap places through that alternate universe, that parallel universe, where like the agent from that world comes into this one, and this one goes into that one, and it was just a really neat storyline. And I believe in that kind of stuff. I kind of believe in the koi pond scenario, kind of where the koi are in their pond, and you're dropping food on them maybe from above, and their whole universe is that pond. That's all they know. And they're not even really aware that there's people looking down on them and dropping little fish pellets and all the little ripples in the water, and they're self-contained, and that's their universe, this tiny little pond for them. That's it,
Well, I mean, it's got to be. It's almost a guarantee. There's got to be more out there than just us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to get to this idea of why the level of skepticism to this point, when people have been documenting ghosts and experiences with things that go bump in the night for literally thousands and thousands of years. Every culture that I know of has some type of story, even if it was spoken word, passed on through the generations, of encounters with the spiritual world. I mean, biblically, and I mean, even beyond that, I mean, ancient cultures have run into spirits and ghosts, and the Native Americans were very big on this and still are. They believe in the spirit world. It's very sacred, and that, it's kind of second nature to them that this exists. And why all the skepticism when probably millions of people over thousands of years have had encounters with the paranormal? Why do you think the insistence that this stuff's just a bunch of hooey?
That we've wondered that same thing for a long time, but the best thing I can come up with is that I think most of them, or the vast majority of them, I hate to say this, but I think they're scared to look at it. I think they're scared to look into it. I don't mean to sound brave or anything, but I mean, after all the years of being a cop and hearing people's stories and seeing, I mean, they're just terrified of a shadow, or terrified because something moves, or even like the old the Poltergeist movie, terrified.
Oh, yeah.
In the kitchen and their cabinet doors are open. Well, all of a sudden, one cabinet door is open and they're petrified. It may have just moved open. Who knows? But the point is, they're so scared they don't want to talk about it. Nobody likes admitting they're scared. Had a train of thought there going, I lost it. But
that happens to me all the time.
I think a lot of people are just plain scared about it. And when they get scared, they get, I don't know, sort of almost combative about it. It still amazes me today that we'll have people that contact us and they'll write us an email and say, I mean, because everything we do is for free. We don't charge anything, because it's sort of like politics. You don't buy the vote. You don't buy the decision.
Sure.
So, but someone will contact us with an email, and it's pretty mild. I mean, they're talking about how I saw this and I saw that, and it's weird, and can you help me? And we'll call them up, and it turns out, I mean, the email belittles the fact that they are literally on the verge of just running. They're that scared. And we're like, wow, didn't even know they were that freaked out about it. But I mean, they are so far gone scared, they're losing it. And we run across this all the time, and it's just sort of amazing that people are that scared by it. Because I mean, one of the things that we say laughingly to a ton of clients is, don't confuse movies and TV with real life. The stuff, it's Freddy Krueger isn't behind the door. It's not the slasher. It's not, the Hillside Strain. Well, that's a bad example. It's not the movies.
Right.
It's in real life. This stuff doesn't happen like that. Sometimes it does, but not every day.
Now, you guys do a lot of private residences along with some of the historical public places, and I like that because, I love staying at haunted hotels. We always try to, if we have a chance to, book ourselves into a place in the communities that are haunted. We love doing that to combine kind of ghost hunting with vacations or business or whatever. But I really like the private residences because they're kind of, by definition, private stories. They're not, when a family calls you guys and says, we need your help. We need you to come figure out what's going on in our home. It's not public knowledge. It's not something that you can read about in the papers. And I think and you guys have been doing this a lot longer than I have, there are thousands of stories out there, and I have found that nobody wants to be the first one to share the ghost story. Dave Mason and I talk about this a lot. Nobody wants to be the first one because they don't want to be called a crank or a quack or psychotic or something's wrong with you, you're mentally ill. But the minute you open up, do you find that to be true? Everyone has a ghost story. Everyone says, oh, my gosh, I grew up in a house out in the country and it was haunted. Oh, my next-door neighbor says his house is haunted. My aunt died the other day and I saw her ghost.
Yep.
They all come out, don't they?
Yes, they do, all the time. But again, it's like you said, though, they're worried about what other people are going to think or what they're going to say. And so it is a private matter, and that's how we keep it. If we do an investigation at a residence, that never goes on our website or anywhere that anyone can see it. All the evidence goes right back to them along with a big, huge report, a written report. So, that's a thing we do. And
that's good. You have to be respectful, as you guys are. A lot of groups out there aren't respectful, and they just go in there and they start running around people's houses and tearing things up, and it's really sad when they do that.
Right, yeah.
Well, one of the things that it's really sad, because one of the things that we are real serious about is the fact that anything we get or anything we do, that's information for the client. I mean, that's their place, that's their location, so we give it all back to them. And if it's a public place, we'll ask them, can we put this on the website? And some say yes, some say no. But the point is that so many of these people, they're scared to death to admit anything. They don't want anything coming out that they're actually scared to call. They're afraid to talk about it. But to go back to something you said just a minute ago, yes, you get to talking to somebody, the first thing that comes to their mind is the fact that they're afraid to admit anything because everybody's going to think they're crazy or weird or stupid. As soon as they realize that we, like Maria and I, are listening to them going, oh yeah, tell me more, it's like the floodgates open. They want to tell you everything.
Absolutely.
And it also helps that some of the TV shows, when they do go back to the clients, you hear them, say, thank you. Now I'm not crazy. You've heard that on some of those shows, because even people who call in some of these TV shows to come in and do an investigation, it's kind of like, okay, can you help and prove at least, that it's not bad, it's not harmful, take something out of the building and remove it or whatever, it's
sure.
That's good, that they're actually doing that as well.
One thing that we noticed that really surprised us, and it's sort of sad too, is almost every public place that was something known or historical value that was haunted or something, every time we've done one, we always ask, well, has anybody else ever investigated it? Well, most of the places, somebody has investigated it, and the first thing we ask then is, well, what'd they come up with? What'd they tell you? And
right.
The answer that is sad is they usually say, they never told us anything.
Oh, they never did a reveal to them?
They never did a reveal. They literally came and did the investigation and then left, and that was the last they ever heard. So
that's sad. Yeah, that's wasted time. That's wasted resources. That's disrespectful to the people to not let them know what's going on.
Right, exactly. So, but that's just groups, it's not a specific at all.
Not everybody, no.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, you guys have been doing this since the 70s, is that right? Paranormal investigating to some degree?
Yes,
now,
to some degree.
Yeah, well, tell me, because this is exciting to me, because I'm trying to think. I want to say Karnacki, but that doesn't sound right. But I went on my Kindle a while back, and I looked for ghost hunting books, and I found this one that was fictional, but it was written, I believe, in the early 1900s, maybe late 1800s, but it's this character, I think it's Karnacki the ghost hunter, and it was fascinating because it shows a ghost hunter in his adventures in the 1800s. I mean, obviously before, even analog recorders, let alone digital, they didn't have, EMF detectors, and it's really, really super cool. Now, I'm going to preface this by not saying the 1970s are the 1800s. I'm not trying to make you guys out to be hundreds of years old. So I want to preface that. But I know, because in the 70s, when I was dreaming about being on the radio, even then, I had my grandfather's old Sony. It seemed like it weighed 100 pounds, and it probably did back then. Tabletop, recorder, and the big tapes and the cassettes and everything. that really excites me to even go back and use technology that isn't the most cutting edge, digital recorders. Because I've gotten EVPs on cassettes, and obviously a lot of investigators have. But how have your investigations changed? Let's go back to the 1970s. How would you guys do an investigation? What were some of the tools you had with you?
That was about it.
That was about it. Yeah, we were lucky if we had a tape recorder and a reel.
It wasn't really, I don't remember ever using, I had, because, rock and roll and all the good music, I had reel-to-reels everywhere, but never used them in ghost hunting. I think about the only tool, literally, back then was, and it was the old standby for every cop, a Pentax K1000 35mm camera.
Wow.
You would take $50 worth of pictures, then spend $100 on development and look at all these pictures that had nothing in them, and there you go. But most of it was, I think, interviews, drawing sketches of the house floor plan or what they saw, and just tell the story. I've got even a couple copies of stories, or I say stories of cases we did way back in the mid-'70s that just a couple pages, and all it is my narration of what they told me and a couple pictures. That's about all it was.
Well, I bet they were probably closer to an accurate chronicling than a lot of the shows that are on TV, which we won't mention. But I kind of like that you did it that way. It seems like that was the more in-depth and professional way to do it. And you guys are both big into history. And I agree with you guys. History is a huge part of paranormal investigating that a lot of people ignore.
Right, exactly. And the evolution has gone where now we have digital and we have everything like that to work with, and EMF detectors and iPods.
Well,
and everything,
It's good to have tons of equipment, and a lot of the stuff that's on TV you see now is, some fabulous stuff. But we have resisted the urge to go out and buy every piece of everything there is, only because of the fact that, you can just overload yourselves with technology. We still, digital cameras, full spectrum cameras, infrared cameras, all kind of videos, EMFs, digital recorders. Those are like carrying be like a carpenter carrying a hammer and a screwdriver. Those you have to have. Those are just perfect. But there is so much good stuff out there that you could easily just, carry a suitcase around behind you, pulling out one piece every other minute. So. But the digital age it's brought some great stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing how, and I always tell people this, and I'll tell them again now, that they don't need to spend a lot of money to get started in this. It can get expensive. Sometimes I feel like a poor, James Bond trying to put together an arsenal of equipment, and it gets pricey, so you have to watch your budget. But anybody can go to Target or to Walmart, and for, about $25, Radio Shack, get just kind of an entry-level recorder, and they even sell the old cassette ones still. I don't know how much longer they'll be selling those, but they sell those too. And you just go to a place you think is haunted, maybe your first time out, maybe go to a haunted hotel or somewhere, in the community is haunted, or better yet, and this creeps people out, and I've heard a lot of people say, don't do this, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, but even do it in your own house. Quiet it down, maybe send the kids with grandma and grandpa, and just set the recorder on your bed when nobody's around, and just start asking questions and play the tape back, and people are shocked at how quickly they can get EVPs. I know people that have tried this, and on their first try they'll start getting voices.
Right, exactly.
And there's nothing wrong. Why not try it in your house? The sounds, the whole atmosphere of your house, so you can say, oh, that's the refrigerator turning on, or the compressor going off, or
Sure.
you can eliminate all those sounds as you're listening back. And yes, it would be amazing if people would do that and actually try it in their homes and see what they get. And one of my best stories was at the Myrtles. We were there for a Halloween celebration that they have up there, and we were just sitting there, and people were all around and everything like that. And this little boy came up, and he had a new little digital recorder that his mom bought for this occasion. And I think he was maybe like 8 or 9 years old. He wasn't very old. And I said, well, why don't you go over there by the gazebo and just talk? I said, because there are children here too. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. So He went over there by himself and came back with the best EVP. And he was so excited that he actually got a young person saying hello to him.
He was probably about the only little kid there was there that day.
Yeah.
And the Myrtles is well known for its lots of ghost children. I hate to use that word, but we'll just say ghost children.
Sure.
But they, he was about the only little kid there. Well, we sat there and watched, and he was so proud of his new recorder, and he wanted to be a ghost hunter like one of the famous shows. And he went across to this gazebo, and we sort of sat there talking to other people and watched this kid, and he was walking around and doing everything, and he was all by himself. When he came back, it was like 30 or 40 minutes later, his mother comes up, and she says, "Listen to this. Does this sound like something to you?" And we were shocked. It was, what?
I was a child actually saying hello to him.
It was a child, yeah, saying hello to him, and it was crystal clear.
Well, it's interesting. We had kind of a world famous. I'm not huge on psychics. I never have been, but we had a really world renowned one who unfortunately died in the last couple of years. She was a really sweet woman, Annette Martin, and she came to our home along with Lloyd Auerbach, who's a very well known parapsychologist from the San Francisco Bay Area, and he came out and she felt the energy in our home right from the beginning. She says usually I have to do a walk through the whole house, and she just stopped. She had her hand on her chest. She goes, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe what's coming through here." And she sat down in our family room, and that was enough. That's all she had to experience. And she felt the presence of like a pioneer family in this house. And we have had encounters with like children, kid ghosts, I guess, in the home. And I have 6 kids, hers, mine, and ours. So it's a very busy Brady Bunch house in this house. And it's interesting because I do believe that child ghosts relate to living children. We see that a lot. Sometimes in horror movies they kind of play it up, but right. I do believe that maybe the ghost kids, either they don't know they're dead or they do know and they miss the real world, the physical world of playing with children. But I know that my youngest stepson had repeated encounters of what he thought was initially his brother going psst, psst in his ear. And he would turn around and there'd be nobody there. I mean, he'd be on the second floor all by himself and he'd hear like a psst right in his ear. And he'd come running down, freaked out. And one time, this was an amazing, and I don't think this was an EVP. I think this was like an audible sound, but I had a recorder going and I forgot that I had it going on. It was, because the digital ones now can record for like days on end, right? So right. I'm glad I played it back because when his younger sister, who's now 5, she must have been maybe 2 at the time, or 3, she's running around and he's teasing her, right? And we're in the other room and he's, trying to get, one up on his little sister and teasing her about something. And all of a sudden, as he's teasing her and annoying her, you hear this sound that goes, it's this weird, it wasn't the dogs, it wasn't anything, it was like a, and we've heard that sound before in the house on, never audibly, but we've heard it on recorders multiple times, even when we're not in the house and stuff. It's very creepy. It sounds like one of those instruments that you kind of like those native instruments where you run a stick across it, and it's like,
yeah.
And he responds to it. So that's how I know it was audible. It wasn't an EVP. He responds and he drops everything he's doing. He goes, "What the heck?"
Yeah.
And then he starts going, "Mom, Mom," and he runs out in the other room. And my wife and I are convinced that maybe that's my mom's spirit not liking him teasing his younger sister, Yeah. And she's like, okay, just beat it. Leave her alone. Stop bugging her. But it sounded like that because as he's getting more and more into teasing her, it's almost like this noise comes in to startle him from doing that, to stop him from doing that.
Well, it's almost like real estate agents always say. It literally comes down to location, location, location. Yeah. Your situation there at your house sounds a lot like ours. Without going into the details, ours is about a 20-something-year-old house. Nothing's ever happened here. Originally, it was way out in the country from the original 1800s Baton Rouge. And now, we've probably got as many EVPs here. We've gotten thousands of EVPs. And what we've gotten here is a huge chunk of them just here in our own house. There's never been anything bad happen.
I know, that's incredible. Here it's a bunch of old cattle land and stuff and ranches and stuff, and we're thinking that maybe it was a family that lived out here, and maybe,
right?
We don't know, maybe something tragic happened and they all died together, a fire or something. We haven't been able to put that part of the history together, but it really is interesting because I grew up, you guys, thinking, like a lot of people do, that if you don't live in a creaky old house, you'll never see a ghost. If you don't live, on an Indian burial ground, or if the house isn't,
Right.
200 years old, nothing's going to happen. But people would be surprised. I talk to people all the time that are the first owners of a home, and there's no murders, there's no deaths. Grandpa didn't die in the other room, and they're startled by the level of paranormal activity.
Right.
And also the fact that when a family member passes, it's also they might be visited by that person who's passed.
They can always come back.
That's what I wonder sometimes too. Is what is your theory on this? Do we all become ghosts? And if so, how come we don't see all of them? In other words, why is it that if we have 30 deceased relatives, only grandma comes through, and we've never seen grandpa, or we've never seen our aunt, or we've never seen our favorite cousin? Or do you think we all are capable? And I know obviously this is all theory, but when we die, do you think it's a matter of trying to connect to the living world, or being capable of connecting, or being allowed to, or what do you think determines that? Like, why is it that we see some dead relatives, but we can go our whole lives without seeing others?
That's a hard one. I mean, that almost comes down to personal opinion or whatever. I think it's speaking for Maria. I think we think that there's a lot of people that they see no need to come back. But I think with other relatives or family members or even friends, that there's a connection. Sometimes it's a connection that you know about, and sometimes a connection you don't know about. That's sort of hard to explain. There's a bond.
Right.
And a lot of times this bond is seen between grandparents and grandchildren, skip a generation type thing. And there's been a lot of, I was going to say documented, but it's not, you can't say documented, but there's been a lot of cases they couldn't explain where a deceased family member is back to visit a child that they never even knew because they were dead before the child was born. And I mean, it's odd, but at the same time, though, it seems like there's people that do come back because there's got to be some connection. And I mean, that's the only thing we can come up with, is there has to be a connection. There's some kind of a love. They may be coming back to as maybe a guardian, someone that they think they need, or they think that you need their help, maybe for guidance. That one's a hard one to explain. It's a lot of theories.
Absolutely. A comical theory I have on EVPs is that it's got to be frustrating. Here you are, no longer live, and I'm not trying to make light of this, but we have to laugh at this stuff sometimes, or else you'll, start hemorrhaging, right? So, you're a ghost. You're not in physical form anymore. You're like, oh, great. I just bit it, whether old age or disease, or you got hit by a bus, or whatever. You're no longer physically here. And you learn the ropes of the afterlife. And that's how I picture it being. Like, you don't just automatically start, handing out EVPs to people, right? So
right.
then all of a sudden you muster the energy that it must take to, share an EVP, a voice or something. And the investigator, maybe it's your own son or daughter or relative, they're like, Grandma, are you here with us right now? And then the EVP is fried chicken. Have you ever noticed that? Like, they're totally disjointed. You know what I mean? Like, you're saying, like, did somebody die in this room? And then it says, like, blueberries. And you're thinking to yourself, why the heck did somebody just say blueberries? And then I picture the ghost, like, kicking themselves, going, I didn't mean to say blueberries. It came out blueberries. I meant to say yes. I meant to say yes. And then they have to, like, build up the energy all over again to say the right word. But why do you think so many EVPs, which, by the way, for people confused, electronic voice phenomenon, these are spirit voices that most of us can't hear with our ears, although I have a partner I'll tell you about in a minute that's pretty amazing, that he does hear them, and then we get them on the tape as well. So they're EVPs to the rest of us, but he hears them audibly. But why do you think so many are disjointed? In other words, if it were that easy, we would just, have a question and answer session with the dead, and we would get yeses and nos, and I'm grandpa, and I died at age 55, and this and that. Why are they sometimes so unrelatable to the questions being asked? What do you think about that? Like, they're usually like one or two words, and oftentimes they have nothing to do with what's being asked.
Well, again, this is theory, but there's obviously, because it's electromagnetic, we have to look at how that comes across and through. And maybe we're not catching all of it. It's not, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like, is it having a hard time coming through to us as they're saying it? And then what our recorders are picking up is the part that actually came through. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I've thought the same thing, that maybe we're just not getting the whole conversation. It's kind of like
Right.
when your cell phone cuts in and out.
Well, also look at it this way
Yes.
too. There's two main concepts in hauntings: interactive and residual.
Yes.
Interactive, for the listeners that aren't really totally aware of it, interactive is where the spirit or the ghost might interact with you. He actually is aware of your presence when you're there. Residual is just sort of like let's say a recording, a playback, where something that occurred 100 years ago was just continuing to happen again and again and again, just over and over.
Right.
So when you get that EVP that says chicken or blueberry, you might be getting residual.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and sort of on the subject but off the subject, one thing that Maria and I have noticed over the years, and it's sort of sad, is you'll get home, you do all those EVP sessions, you bring it home, and over the period of the next 1, 2, 3 weeks, I mean, it takes forever to do this analysis. The vast majority of EVPs we have gotten have been two different things. And of course, one's debatable, and that is a simple word, hey. We get hey a lot. So that one's debatable because, okay, maybe that's wind or noise or something. But the one that's always clear that we get all the time, and we've gotten it probably 1,000 times more than any others, is the phrase, help me.
Yes, I hear that from a lot of people.
That one always sort of bothers us because, I mean, you're there, you're asking all these questions, you're being nonchalant and cool and walking around and doing all this stuff, and then you go home and listen to the EVP, and you wonder if it was actually somebody right there with you asking you for help. Then you feel bad.
Yeah, because you're thinking, how do I help you, right? I mean,
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
well, that's what I liked about the Ghost Whisperer. I don't know if you guys ever got into that show or not.
Yes.
With, what was it, Jennifer Love Hewitt, but
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that idea of a woman who's able to connect with the spirit world and resolves, issues in, in a 45-minute episode or whatever,
Right.
and kind of brings people to at peace at the end. And that's what you guys try to do, is if you can't bring peace to the deceased, you want to bring peace of mind to the living and let people know that it's okay, right? I mean, that's one of the most rewarding things a paranormal investigator does, is not, it's exciting. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. It's very exciting. It's an adrenaline rush. But when you can put a family's mind at ease at the end of the investigation, that's what really counts.
Yes.
Well,
Exactly.
for me personally, and this is sort of a mean thing to say, but I mean, for me personally, it sort of bothers me with a lot of the shows that basically say, we will investigate and then we'll get all the answers for you. I don't really see many of the shows getting any answers. They get the one thing I think that the vast majority of clients are asking for is for someone to tell them, you're not crazy, we hear it too. You're not crazy, we saw it. We also experienced it. So they're looking for someone to validate the fact that they're seeing or hearing things that they are actually hearing. And that's part of what we do.
What is the scariest location? I mean, the Myrtles, for people that don't know, it's a very, very historical plantation. A lot of pain and suffering and a lot of stories over the years. Some of them validated, some kind of enshrined in lore and stuff, but a lot of pain, a lot of conflict. It's one of the most haunted locations, I believe, probably not just in Louisiana, but probably anywhere in the country. But what's the most frightening place you've ever been in where you're thinking to yourself, gosh, I'm really actually scared here? Have you guys really, really gotten scared in a location?
Not really. I mean, I guess the best way I could put it is there's not really scary as much as it is intense moments. Moments that it's like you're sitting there thinking, wait, what's going on here? This is something. I mean, but not scary.
Jax, we did,
We're thinking the same thing.
state hospital.
Jackson State Hospital.
And there was on the fourth floor, Ken actually was, I was just sitting in the middle of the floor doing the EVP session, and Ken was walking around the connecting rooms, and he went into one side and just, he got to the point where when he came out, he was actually doing what we call the police approach, keeping an eye on the door, keeping your back away from the door, as we're leaving. And I guess you can tell him, Ken, how you were feeling about it. But, yeah, I mean, I knew at that point there was something that was getting to Ken, and just because of his reaction and how he was protecting himself. So
Yeah, that what the location was I forget, it was built in the 1800s. It was originally Louisiana's, I forget the technical name, but it was their main hospital for the criminally insane.
Oh, wow.
These locations, and there's a lot of them across the country, but the locations that were former hospitals or former mental asylums, these can get, picking a nice word here, pretty rough. They got a lot of bad things going on there, and not because of the staff or the place or anything, but just because of the torment that people went through there. But anyway, that location, it got to a point where, I mean, I could actually it felt like I was being surrounded, like everybody was moving up on me, even though there was nobody there. And you could feel the whole room go to bad. And I guess that really wasn't so much scary as it was just intense. And it's one of those, okay, I think we need to finish this up and move on.
Do you guys have skeptic friends? Do you have friends who know what you do and say, oh, come on? I mean, how do you feel about that after doing this for over 30 years? If people say, like, you're just full of crap, or if they're nicer than that, they say, they always think they have an explanation. I mean, the EVPs are radio signals that are astray somewhere, somehow. The apparition was either really a person standing there or a figment of your imagination. And, the shutters closing and opening, it was just the wind. How do you guys, my wife tells me, who cares what other people think? I mean, that's her attitude, which is a good one, I think. And I don't have to prove anything to anybody. I know this stuff's real, just like you guys know it's real.
Yeah.
But do you have to put up with that a lot? I mean, do you have like even family or friends or colleagues that say, oh, come on, why do you do this? It's obviously just a figment of your imagination.
Yes, and yes. Family member, yes. But he was converted very quickly when he came down.
Right about 30 minutes.
Yeah, in about 30 minutes.
Wow.
Kent, my sister, basically said, let's not talk about it. And
he doesn't believe it.
He doesn't believe it. And so Ken, we were eating supper, and he asked, he said, so what about this? And Ken said, well, come on in the back. And he took him in there and let him listen to some EVPs and let him look at some IR footage and everything like that. And, well, we were planning to take him to the Myrtles, but that was kind of kibosh there for a little bit. And so we said, we'll go to New Orleans. Well, the next morning they get up and he says, well, why don't we go to the Myrtles? So we went to the Myrtles and we did the tour, the daytime tour, and I had an EMF in my hand and a tape recorder as we're going through it. And when that EMF started moving and going, shooting up to the red, I said, look. And he was so glued. He finally ended up taking my digital recorder and doing EVP sessions all by himself. And then, yeah, I mean, that's
one of our cameramen in the show. He basically was a skeptic, and he basically said, I don't disbelieve it, but I want to see the proof, so show me. So it was, I don't know, after about 6 months of filming of shows, we basically ended up, he was right in the middle of, at the Myrtles, as a matter of fact, he was in the middle of Paranormal Experience, where for 43 minutes they recorded people, nobody in the whole building. He recorded, with his own camera work, 43 minutes worth of people opening and closing doors all around him, footsteps all around him, drawers opening in cabinets, doors slamming, and there's nobody in the building because we're all outside guarding the corners like cops to make sure nobody was in or out of the building. And he became a believer in one night.
Yeah.
Wow. Tell us about this TV show. It's very intriguing. You guys talked to me a little bit about it earlier off the air. Tell the folks about that.
Well, basically what it is, it's the show is called Haunted. We've already filmed season 3, which will start in, if I remember right,
August.
Starts in August.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be season 3. It's pretty much shown only right at this time. It's only in Louisiana and I think a little bit of southern Mississippi and southern Texas. Basically, the show is 6 people. There's 2 main stars, Bo and Megan. 2 camera people, and then Maria and I as technical consultants. But like we mentioned earlier, we're the only show I think on that basically says, "Hey, who do you think's holding the camera?" And then there's the cameraman in the shot. If the paranormal thing happens to one of the camera people, well, they become part of. I mean, they're in the show.
Right.
But it's basically about half historical, half paranormal, where we go to locations that are pretty much known or reported to be haunted, and we try to get as much as we can. In all these years, we have yet to get a location that didn't prove to be paranormal. We're still waiting for our first one that isn't.
Wow. So someone like me in California, we can't see this anywhere. I mean, will this eventually be on DVD or available for purchase, or what's the plan with that?
Right now, we're actually still waiting. I mean, we've got our own little TV versions on tape, but I mean, we're still waiting for we keep kiddingly call it the box set to come out. And the guy we produce our own show. I say we produce it. Bo and Megan, basically, it's, I think Haunted, it's on Facebook. It's Eros Productions is their company. And they actually produce and market their own show. So, I mean, the show, those people that run the show are the ones that are in the show, and they're the ones that, I guess, I don't know what the word is in TV, sell the show.
Right, right.
Right. And but no, the show's actually really good. It's different from the others because we show a lot of stuff that the other shows don't show, but at the same time, we're using a lot of the same techniques and the same things.
Now, this is kind of in backwards order because it was originally going to be my first question to you guys in this interview, and I appreciate you guys going along with me. I know I said 60 minutes, and we're kind of over time here. I appreciate you being with me. Everyday Paranormal, a lot of people might be thinking, gosh, where have I heard that before? I've never been in Louisiana, but I know that name. A lot of people may remember that from Ghost Lab, which was on TV, and Brad and Barry Kling, the Kling brothers, and they started Everyday Paranormal. Is that right? Those brothers?
Uh-huh. They started it in San Antonio, Texas.
And how did you guys get involved? Because I understand when they branched off and they had like various groups around the country for Everyday Paranormal, you guys were the first ones, right?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we... I for Ken's birthday present, I said, "Oh, we're gonna go. Hey, these guys are here. They're putting on a investigation at the Myrtles. Let's go and see how they do theirs." And so that's what we did. And so we showed up there with some other people and did the investigation with them that night and had a good time. Got a lot of great evidence. And the next morning. Who was it, Brad or Barry?
Brad and Barry.
Yeah, came up and basically asked us if we'd like to be affiliated with them and be in Louisiana. And we said, well, yeah, sure, why not? So that's how we got to be Everyday Paranormal of Louisiana.
And it's sad because that show's not on the air anymore. But a lot of these shows, there's just so many of them now. I remember when Ghost Hunters came out, it was kind of a unique thing. And what are your thoughts on... You don't have to say anything, specific about any particular show, but it seems like there's so many of them, and so many have dropped by the wayside, and some have hung in there, like Ghost Hunters, and that one's, I think, close to its 10th season. I think it's season 9 right now. I lose track, but a lot of them, have only lasted maybe one season or even a couple of episodes, and then they get the axe. What do you foresee the future being for these ghost shows? Do you think they're going to kind of peak out and then... Or have we seen the peak yet? Are they 5 years, 10 years from now, no one's going to have ghost shows on TV anymore? What do you think's going on with that?
To look back, I mean, I would have thought 20 years ago that emergency room and hospital shows had hit a peak.
Right.
But it's the same kind of thing. And I mean, even in the past couple of years, I've thought, ghost hunting shows have got to have hit a peak. It just has to be, but I mean, there's new ones coming out on every channel, and I know that several markets are out trying to locate and buy more shows. But at the same time, some of these shows some of them are really good and some of them are really stupid, but at the same time, each one of them we watch a lot of them.
Merits.
They have merits to them. Some of them have good, well, like one of the new ones, without saying who it is, it's some southern paranormal groups. And they present them in the show as backwoodsy and local folklore type thing. But these guys have got some talent. I mean, they're actually good investigators. But then again, we're investigators, so what we're looking at is the investigative prospect of it.
Sure.
But yeah, each of the shows has some good stuff. Some of them are humorous.
And
yeah.
But then at the same time, Spence, it's almost like people are accepting the paranormal because these shows are out there more. And so maybe that's good. I mean, maybe people are getting more open-minded or thinking about it a little bit and are wanting these type of shows, Well, that's kind of what I'm hoping for, at least.
Mm-hmm. with what Maria said, there's several shows on right now that are pretty big hits on regular, whatever you call it, I forget, national syndication or whatever,
Sure.
national networks. And the shows present, their aspect of presenting a show is the, I don't know what you call it, the eyewitness, non-actor type, where it's like my ghost story type thing.
Right,
and
right.
Those, I think, like Maria says, those shows alone convince other people that, hey, that's what happened to me. That's what I saw. That's what I'm going through. And I think it helps a lot of people out in that way. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've been chatting with Ken and Maria Allaire, lead investigators at Everyday Paranormal Louisiana. I told my wife I was interviewing you guys. She was really excited, and she wants to go back to Louisiana. I go, well, we got to get in touch with Ken and Maria, and if they don't mind us bugging them while we're there, I would love to tag along with you guys, either on an investigation or maybe just buy you guys dinner or something.
Oh, hey, and besides that, we'll even recommend a wonderful place for you to stay that's lovely haunted down there in New Orleans. It's a bed and breakfast.
It's a bed and breakfast that you will adore. I mean, not even, I'm
Your
not saying
wife
that.
will love it.
Not even jokingly. I mean, you will love it. It's haunted, and it is fabulous. It is gorgeous.
Is it in the French Quarter? Where is it?
It's 5 continents, bed and breakfast.
Wow.
And the Myrtles is always superb. I mean, the Myrtles is, excuse me, one of the most beautiful places and tranquil. Yeah, it's haunted, but at the same time, it's a fabulous place.
I want to go with my recorder to the Myrtles and just stir stuff up and just go into the middle of the place and go, I don't believe there's any ghosts here, honey.
That'll work.
You'll probably get that one woman yelling at you, get out, like she's done before.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you come down here, we'll set something up for you. We'll do a show around you visiting.
Well, you guys are great, and I want everyone to check out Everyday Paranormal LA for Louisiana, everydayparanormalLA.com, and people in Louisiana who may be listening can contact you guys. Now, how far away do you guys go for investigations? Like, do you have like a little perimeter that you guys kind of draw a line and say, well, that's a little too far? Where do you guys go?
Well, sort of yes and no. I mean, if it's something where somebody says, I hear noises, please come to my house, and I live in Oklahoma, we've gotten a couple of those, but it's sort of like, look, here's what you can do. Try this.
Yeah.
But no, we'll do New Orleans, Baton Rouge. We'll go north into Lafayette, Alexandria. There's a couple locations in Texas that we'd love to get to. Some of southern Mississippi we would go to, but I mean, these for us though. I mean, the fact we do everything for free. I mean, it costs a fortune.
Oh, absolutely, sure.
Equipment alone. I mean, you working with Dave, you know how that goes.
Oh yeah.
Hotel expenses and gas and all the equipment and everything. It's that and the time and energy and having to take off from regular jobs. That everything piles up. So yeah, it's in the fact that we've never done an investigation that we did not get. Maria's an expert in EVPs, and she just, I mean, when she starts doing EVP analysis, you might as well get a pad and paper out because it's just tons of them. So we always get tons of EVPs on every location. So yeah, we go pretty far, but we try to watch where we're going.
Absolutely. Now, aside from your website, do you guys want to plug any Twitter or Facebook or anywhere else you'd like to direct people? I'd love for you to let everybody know how to get in touch with you.
No, we're not Twitters and we're not Facebook.
Okay. Well, that keeps life simple. I mean, I spend hours of my life every month. I mean, days of my life probably every month on those things. So it's a real time and energy sucker for sure.
Oh, yeah. But no, the website you can go to and...
There's a contact page where they can fill it out and then it'll come to us and we'll respond in a reasonable amount of time depending on where we are. And
we try.
Yeah.
But there's also several links on there that go to other locations that would be, I think, interesting to some of the viewers.
Now, what investigations do you have coming up? Anything exciting in the days, weeks, or months ahead?
We have we do have a private residence that we'll be doing later this month.
And what's going on with that without revealing too much? I don't want you to reveal anything private, but what kind of standard stuff? Or what is...
Standard, yeah, basically it's more things that shouldn't be happening there that are, and they've been in contact with us, so we're going to go out and see what that's about. It does have a lot of history at that location. So,
well, one of the sad things about Louisiana is the fact that we've got, I mean, thousands of plantations, and of those thousands of plantations, there's a lot of them that all it is just the land. Some of them might have just what do you call it?
Like the
brick
foundations, or yeah.
Yeah, the foundation, that's all that's left, or a fireplace sticking up. But the thing is, it's back to that same thing we were saying earlier. It's location. And you can still go there and get stuff, but then it's not as much fun investigating, 3 o'clock in the morning, standing in an open field next to a chimney, as it is going to a place that's actually a whole building. But yeah, we just finished filming the season 3 stuff, which will start airing, I guess, in August. So it's sort of like a break time for at least a week or two.
Well, I want you guys to email me and be in touch with me when those become available on DVD or download or something, okay? And I'll tell everybody about it, because those sound like exciting episodes.
I thought I had it for you where you could actually go and watch the shows, because it was on a website here a month ago, and I just found out this afternoon after you and I talked that it is not on there. So some more checking, but I'll let you know.
Well, absolutely. Let us know. And I'd love to chat with you guys again sometime, because you guys were both fantastic, and I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Well, it was fun, Spence.
We loved it. Thanks, Spencer.
Hey, thanks a lot, you guys. That's Ken and Maria Allaire, lead investigators of Everyday Paranormal Louisiana. Their website, everydayparanormalLA.com. I'm Spencer Hughes. This has been another paranormal edition of my show. We usually do these once a week. Thanks for listening. Share this episode with all your friends, whether they're into the paranormal or not, believers or skeptics alike. And we'll do another one real soon. Thanks for listening.